Well, hello and welcome to this edition of the EV Revolution Show. My name is Kenneth Bacor, the host for episode 40. 40 already. Wow, time is flying, I tell you. Got a few stories I'm going to talk about today for this week's episode. And let me start first. Let's go over a little pond, across the pond here, at least from Canada, where I reside, over to England. And there's a story about London. They just went live about a week or so ago on the first 24-hour ultra-low emission zone. And that is awesome news. Now, what that means is that they've got a downtown core of London proper that you have to have the right vehicles to be able to drive down there, basically. And you have to have low emission vehicles to be able to drive down there. And if you don't, you can get fines and all that kind of stuff. And they just went live with that. Now, this is an effort to reduce air pollution. And if anybody's been to London to visit, you know that it's a pretty busy city, especially the downtown core. A lot of vehicles, a lot of diesel vehicles, a lot of them not so nice from the fumes and the smoke that they release. And over time, that can create quite the, not only from a smog, but certainly a bad air quality. And London's had its fair share, just like other cities. So in an effort to reduce air pollution, they've come out with the first 24-hour ultra-low emission zone. It's a lot to say. So basically that only vehicles are going to be allowed that meet the new emission standards. Now, you might be asking, well, why really do this? Does it actually have any impact? Well, there's a study that's been done, and they found that London has seen a reduction in the total number of vehicles seen in the central part to around 11,000 or fewer vehicles per day. That's still a lot of vehicles, but that's a reduction, which is a good thing. Now, 38% rise in total number of compliant vehicles in the zone over the last year to 2 years, basically since they've been trialing this, and an increase in the proportion of compliant vehicles in the central London zone from 39% in February of 2017 to over 60% in March of this year. It's estimated that emissions will fall 45% in this zone. So I think this is it's already seemed to be changing mindsets. So congratulations on London. And I'll certainly continue to monitor this to see how they go over the next little while. Staying in Europe, I wanted to just jump over to France and talk about Paris. I haven't talked about public transport busing for quite some time from an electrification perspective, but a story came out about Paris, a company called the RATP Group, which is the public transportation company that serves Paris and its surrounding communities. And Paris, of course, a really, really large city and community in France. And they have plans in place to retire all of 4,700 conventional buses. So these are probably diesel or some diesel derivatives of those in their fleets, and to replace them with zero and or ultra low emission vehicles by 2025, so only in about 6 years. That's a lot for 4,700 buses. It's a huge operation now. This company has over 60,000 employees, and they bring in over 6 billion euro of revenue per year. So obviously a big transit organization. So they've been taking bids and talking to manufacturers, and they've awarded a contract worth 400 million euro for the first 800 electric buses. And the order is going to be split equally among 3 French bus manufacturers. It's going to be ULEZ, Alstom, and Bolloré. If I pronounced that correct, I might not have. My French isn't good. According to the source here for this story, now the electric buses will be your standard 12-meter long vehicles, which I believe is somewhere in the 40-foot range for our non-metric folks. The first 150 buses are due to enter service before 2020, so they've got a really accelerated start to get 150 out there. And they're also installing charging stations in their service depots. To support 12 of its 25 bus servicing the areas to start, and they'll increase that. Now, they're also planning to add 641 electric buses and natural gas-powered buses to service the communities surrounding Paris. So this organization, working with the IDFM, will increase adoption of electrification and natural gas. NG is a decent alternative as well. Again, similar to what London has experienced with congestion and traffic and smog and basically bad air quality. It's nice to see public transport getting a boost and getting a shift into electrification. Now, a quick video that came out that was reported on about the Nissan Leaf E Plus. We haven't seen a lot of actual driving reviews yet of the car. Of course, I had a chance to see it at the Detroit International Auto Show when I was there, but I haven't had a chance to drive one. I'm hoping to get my hands on one by the end of next month, the end of May. I'm still working with Nissan Canada to try to get one, and that's the ETA they're telling me right now. So I'm looking forward to having a bit of a spin and doing an impressions video on that, at least for driving. But range and how, I think the big question with Nissan is, how is this new larger battery pack, more cells and the 62 kilowatt hour pack, how is it doing for the heat? And how's it doing really in a range? Well, this video is done in Japan by a gentleman showing, just really going about and driving this car for a couple of days and to see what kind of range he could get. And he started with just under 99% of battery state of charge, 99.4 if you want to get exact. And it indicated 462 kilometers or 287 miles of starting range on this new Leaf E Plus. So at 100%, he indicated that. He got down to 56%, and it indicated a range of 245 kilometers or 152 miles after he drove about 177 kilometers or 110 miles. See, I'm giving you both numbers here, folks. I get a lot of comments about why don't you give metric versus imperial or the other way around. Now, at the 33% battery state of charge mark, the Leaf indicated a range of 158 kilometers, or 98 miles, after covering 296 kilometers or 184 miles. And then at 16% state of charge, the indicator range was 76 kilometers or 47 miles after he drove 383 kilometers or 238 miles. So if you add those numbers up, that would total 459 kilometers or 285 miles. Now, this isn't NEDC, this isn't some Japanese standard, this isn't WLTP or EPA. This is what he reported. And he tracked his kilometers just by using a trip odometer and tracked how long he drove until he needed to charge up. And that's what he got. A really, really nice 285 miles. Now, to complement this, I've read some other articles and looked at some other YouTube videos and read some other reports from people that have an E Plus that are starting to drive it around and report what they're seeing. And consistently, what I'm hearing is two things. One, it's able to maintain a really good really good charging throughput of anywhere from 44 up to about 72, and it can sustain 72 almost up to about 80% around there, where it starts to taper down to the 40s. So a really noticeable difference over the 40 kilowatt hour Leaf, if you're familiar with how that charges. And also the temperature during this whole video trip didn't really go over the halfway mark, even with the fast charging near the end. Now, the temperatures were relatively mild. They were in the 15 to 20 degrees Celsius range, got down to the single digits at night. But for the most part during the day, they were fairly mild temperate temperatures. So it wasn't really like a Phoenix or Arizona temperature where it's 104 degrees or somewhere in the 40 degrees C mark. But certainly this gives you a good indication that Nissan has done, again, some changes to their battery pack. They may not have any thermal cooling into that, any liquid cooling or any active cooling, but the chemistry and the redesign slightly of the way that they've put the pack together, the cells, and put them all together, and the housing seems to have taken care of any heating issues. Now, it's still a little early, but we'll wait and see. And everybody's familiar with the Nissans, with the Rapid Gate that came out last year and the throttling that happens on the 40 kilowatt. The new E Plus seems to not have any sort of characteristics at all to associate with Rapid Gate. So that's great news for those that are thinking about the larger battery pack for the Leaf or other cars. And again, it's a really solid choice by what I'm seeing so far. I'll keep monitoring this, and I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to have a Leaf E Plus for more than a couple of hours so that I can actually do a trip and try some multiple fast charging and document this whole thing to kind of really get some stats. That's my hope within another month, and when the weather here warms up a bit too, so it'll really put it to the task. But good news, and that's phenomenal range that the Leaf E Plus is getting. It's right in line with the competitive products from Chevy, from the base Model 3 and so forth. Excuse me, that's just phenomenal in a nice package. So it really is a good alternative or another good option to the battery electric vehicles that are within that price point and battery size. So nice to see the E Plus doing well from the initial starts. Now, speaking of Tesla's Model 3, there was a little bit more news that came out about updates. So there, I think of that software update that I mentioned on the last show, or one just slightly after that software update, Tesla announced some power increases and range increases from a software update. And that's, that's one of the beauties, and I've said this right from the start when Trevor and I started the Model 3 Autoscope show, that's one of the uniquenesses of Tesla and their designs is the over-the-air updates, is that the car continues to evolve as you have it over time. And in fact, it gets better with more functionality and more features that are offered as you own it, because it's very heavily software dependent. And one could argue that Tesla's cars are more software than hardware, but there's certainly a good mix of both. And here's a good example of the Model 3s that got updated with the 2019.8.2 software version. Tesla was able to increase the vehicle's peak power output by about 5% and boost the top speed of the performance model to 162 miles an hour. So get on the Autobahn, and I'd like to see some video of somebody doing 162. Now, a separate software update will extend the range of the long-range Model 3 as well by about 15 miles. So that's pretty good. So you get in your car and it was 310 miles one day. Now it's 325 miles the next day of the long range. So just for a software update. So you got to love, Tesla for that reason, that you can get in and find those benefits in their vehicles. So, if anybody has this update and they've seen these kind of improvements, please put comments in the YouTube or send me an email and let me know. All right, staying with Tesla, it's an interesting story that just came out last night, just before I was actually getting this show ready to tape for today. And it's about Panasonic and the relationship that they have with Tesla. Now, I'm still trying to kind of understand this story, but basically, from what I can read, is that Panasonic's wanting to back off a little bit, not back out, but back off a little bit of their relationship with Tesla. It's, Panasonic, from the battery division perspective, for the automotive battery, they have a lot of their eggs in one basket, that basket being Tesla Motors. And, which can be a good thing and a bad thing, because if the company's booming and you can't keep up with orders, that's not a bad thing. However, if the company goes up and down or stalls or slows down, then that can affect your business. And that's precisely what's happened. What Panasonic is reporting is that they've decided to do two things. One is they've decided to halt their investment in the vehicle battery plant that's jointly run with Tesla, which is Gigafactory 1 out in Reno, Nevada. So they decided to hold off the investment, and I read a corresponding article around the same time as this one that construction has actually temporarily stopped right now on the plant. Doesn't mean the plant's not running, it's just that expansion that they're doing is stopped, that construction work. What they've built so far is pretty enormous, and there's a lot going on there. And so Panasonic decided to kind of put the kibosh on some dollars for that and hold a little bit there to slow that down. And also, they want to reduce the dependence on Tesla. And that, from a business perspective, like I said off the top of this story, if it's booming, then okay, you can run that pony all the way to the finish line. But in this case, where Tesla does have these sputter starts, right? They have a booming quarter, then they have a bit of a slower quarter, then they reinvest, and they have some losses, then they go up. They're being a bit more consistent in that approach rather than just losing money for the last few years. They are making money in more quarters than they have before, which is a good thing. And we know that sales are doing quite well. But they do have these sputter starts, especially when it comes to production numbers. They blow them away one month, and then they back off the next month. And this impacts the supply chain. And one of those supply chains is Panasonic batteries, the automotive batteries. So Panasonic's saying, look, we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. We want to branch out. So we're going to slow down a little bit about what we deal with you guys at, and we're going to look at, diversifying our portfolio as far as clients go. And that's a good move, because I've been saying now for a long time, if you've seen and watching the show and see the news, that there are more and more auto manufacturers that are getting into electrification. And all of them are going to need battery sourcing. Nobody else is building their own batteries. They're all looking for... Anyway, nobody's really into that. So they're going to look at SDI and LG and all these other guys that are out there for battery cells, like VW has diversified. So it's good that Panasonic be able to offer their business to other automotive suppliers as they spool up, as they're starting to catch up. Everybody else is a couple of years behind where Tesla is currently from a supply chain and from getting through EV, battery electric vehicle productions. And I haven't read anything that Panasonic's going to slow down production to Tesla. They might just put a cap and say, look, we're going to keep it at this and that's it, and go from there. So keep your eye on this story, and I'll continue to monitor it. I want to quickly just bring up Audi and the e-Tron. I know I've talked about them quite a lot. Now their sales are finally getting going for this past month in March. They're hitting what the article here says 4-digit numbers. So they've exceeded over 1,000. Hey, that's a 4-digit number. That's a good thing. I'm not mocking this at all. I think that's good. You know, as I mentioned just in the last segment there, that everybody else is playing catch up from a production standpoint to Tesla, with the exception of Nissan, because Nissan has carved out where they want to be and what they want to do from production. So that's what they're doing there. But everybody else is playing catch up, and Audi needs, has a lot of muscle to be able to increase production. But remember, this is a high-end $90,000 Canadian. This is a high-end vehicle, the e-Tron, a lovely car. And as I've had this conversation with many, that that beat up poor Audi on the efficiency ratings. Look, people who buy luxury cars, 9 out of 10 don't give a crap about efficiency when they buy a luxury car. They're either buying it for performance or for roominess or comfort or ride or all these other reasons, not necessarily for miles per gallon that it's going to get, or electricity battery range. Now, of course, range is important, and you've got to have some decent numbers, and I think the e-Tron has sufficient range to get, again, pretty well anybody who's going to buy this thing their daily driving ranges. And with the fast enough charging and with an increased network, especially in Europe to start, they shouldn't have any problems in being able to fuel their e-Tron moving forward. So e-Tron sales are finally getting going. Norway and Germany are leading the way. Now Audi does have more than 20,000 reservations, which is really good for a car of this size and price point, and globally. And I'm really excited to start seeing them coming out. From what I remember from a Canadian viewpoint, I don't think we're going to start seeing some Audis land on our shores till the fall of this year because of the allocations. But I am in contact with Audi, and I hope to see one, at least be able to test drive one or to have a closer look at one, and not just sitting in it sometime after the summer. And hopefully public deliveries will start here in Canada then. So they are getting out. So very good on Audi, and keep your eye on them. There was a quick teaser that came out from Infiniti on the QS, and Nissan/Infiniti have been doing a lot of reveals over the last few car shows. Well, here's another one from Infiniti called the QS Inspiration. It was just a teaser ahead of the Shanghai Auto Show, which will be coming up later this year. It's a sports sedan. It gives the performance all-wheel drive powertrain. Now, there's not much specs on this at all. We don't know if it's all electric or if it's a plug-in hybrid or a non-plug-in hybrid or using their e-power system. I really hope that this is either a plug-in or even better an all-electric vehicle, or they may release it as a mixed option. But no other details other than the production version should be sometime in 2021. I'm sure more information and pictures will come out after the Shanghai Auto Show of the new concept Infiniti QS Inspiration. So keep looking for that. And finally, on the auto segment, there's a company that I was going to report on a few months ago called Atlis. And Atlis is bringing in an electric pickup truck. So they're another one of these companies that are throwing their hat into that very lucrative automotive segment of the pickup truck and SUV market, of course. This is a U.S.-based organization, I believe, out of New Mexico, if I'm not. I'll find that in a sec when I scroll down on the story. Now, I didn't report on them a couple months ago because I was about to, and then when I dug into it a little bit more, all I realized is all they had was renderings of a design concept and some ideas. Very little money, very little employee count, and not much to go on other than rendering. So I always like to see a little bit more. Well, it looks like they've got a little bit more over the last few months. They must have got some more funding or continued on with that, so that they've actually come out with a platform. They call it their XP platform. And as they want to do, that like others are doing, and being able to share the platform. So like Rivian wants to do with their platform, like Volkswagen wants to do with the MEB, or will be doing with the MEB platform, and sharing that out to not only companies within the VW group, but companies that want to buy that and build their own product around it. So it looks like Atlis is doing the same thing. So not only do they want to bring a pickup truck to market, but they also want to allow that platform to be OEM'd out to others, and for them to build their own products based on that. So a two-pronged business approach, which is a good idea in my opinion. Try to diversify if you can, rather than all your eggs in one basket, especially when you're a startup, and they are still, for all intents and purposes, a startup. But they have built this prototype skateboard platform based on that design, of course, for their XT pickup truck, and some pictures, of course, are showing up as I'm speaking. They've done some testing on fast charging, and they've been able to get it to charge in less than 15 minutes through some fast charging examples. And there's not a whole lot more about it. Now, some of these pictures are really either really good renderings or they have at least a prototype built. And my understanding is they do have at least a prototype built now that they're starting to use for testing and to go out there and market and flog this thing and get some press coverage of it. So if anybody knows anything more about these guys, please share it with me either in the comments or send me an email. I will continue to follow them, and it is exciting to see more competition heat up in this very lucrative space. All right, folks, and that's reached the end of the show for this update for episode 40 of the EV Revolution Show. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me. As always, my contact information will be coming up shortly, but if you're not aware of the fully charged events, they're flashing up here behind me. Go check out their website to get information. The June event's only about a month and a half away. Boy, I'm getting excited. I guess I better start getting ready for that. So again, thank you very much for those who comment and who continue to follow me and subscribe. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for your opinions. I do try to answer every comment that I get on the show and respond to it. You guys and gals are all pretty good, pretty smart people out there that have some really good comments or great questions to ask, or some good insight that I don't know at all, folks. So I try to keep educating minds one tailpipe at a time. That's my motto, right? Get the news out there. And again, big thanks, humble thanks to Patreon supporters as they continue to support me as I grow the show. And I believe, as I always check my desk to see if I have any other notes that are outstanding. No, I think that's about it. So again, thank you very much for taking the time to watch me. Contact information is following. And again, everybody stay safe. And until next time, we'll see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.